Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest, Jon Emery. After losing a 20-year job and going through a painful divorce within the same year, Jon Emery embarked on a journey of self-discovery that led him to deeper authenticity, stronger connections with his children, and a passion for helping others share their journeys. Through his podcast, Life's Checkmark, ranked in the top 10% of podcasts with over 175 episodes, he creates a space for those feeling lost or alone while guiding people who have hesitated to start their podcast, helping them overcome doubts and bringing their voices to the world. He has become a podcast accountability coach, leader of a podcast community, a speaker, and an author. And with that, Jon, welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast. I've been looking forward to our conversation for quite a while now.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I'm excited. I'd like to see where this conversation goes.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We met, I think, through a mutual contact of ours, Alethea Felton, and we connected and we found out that we really both had a passion for podcasting, for helping others, and creating a platform where individuals can authentically share their journeys and help others in the process. We aligned, and I've been on your Life's Checkmark podcast, outstanding podcast, which I would highly recommend to their viewers that they follow, subscribe to. Jon has some great guests. And again, I had the pleasure and privilege of being on your podcast, and I had a great experience. So
Yeah, it was great having you. And I'm glad you were able to share everything you could within the time we had. And I know there's so much more. So I'll have to do it again.
yeah, there's a lot of categories to my story, but there's also a lot of categories to yours and others. And because of that, I've had individuals back for follow-up conversations because there's just so much more to their stories. But one of the things I've discovered is that we have such a great community of podcasters that look out for each other, that refer really what they believe will be great guest contributors to their podcast. We're all in this together. And I think we're all trying to make a positive difference in the world. It's about impact. It's never about competition among us.
Yeah, it's not about competition whatsoever. So, and most of them don't make it past episode 3. So like, that's why we just got to keep pushing and keep sharing with each other guests and just keep encouraging to just keep pushing forward. Cause there's a reason, right? There's a reason we started this.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, it was the persistence of two pain in the butt students of mine that wouldn't let up. And then the whole universe began clamoring for me to do a podcast because people outside of my students started really encouraging me to do a podcast. So, when that starts opening up and when the universe or divine intervention really starts opening up or just giving you the same message, it's time to kind of heed that.
Yeah.
So,
and there you go.
Yeah, there we go. But anyway, I got some questions for you.
Okay.
So, and also, looks like we have another visitor to the podcast. For those of you on YouTube, you're going to see Jon's beautiful dog, Rain. And Rain can chime in anytime she wants. So,
feel free.
And as I mentioned prior to recording, she might have better questions for you than I ever might have. So,
yeah, probably why I'm podcasting all the time.
Hey, our animals are our greatest teachers anyway. So,
that's true.
But anyway, Jon, my first question for you is tell our audience about the experiences that have shaped your life path and your life passions today.
And navigating through the whole job and the divorce part was something that was nerve-wracking for me, right? Let's start with the job part. I always wanted out. I didn't know it was going to be the way it was, right? And I got to see 60 people or so walk out the door in October of 2019 when production stopped. And I just wound up hanging in there till May of the following year because I was in the logistics warehouse space. And I was one of the last 3 out the door. We had to make sure everything was cleaned out. Um, that last day was nerve-wracking because you went from this fully functional facility to a shell, and everybody else left already. So I had to navigate that, and I wound up doing other stuff along the way, and then I wound up jumping into finding out the divorce was coming up, and I had no idea about that. That was all just I was blindsided in a sense up to a point. But I guess I was prepared for it to come, but before that word came up, there was a lot of I don't know what's going on. So it was quite the journey just navigating through that. And there's a whole bunch that we can jump in anywhere in there.
Yeah, for me, I do a lot of work, as you know, with bereavement support, and I've been no stranger to grief, but loss of a job and loss of a relationship through divorce, those are two very significant pieces of grief. I mean, it's not loss related to death, but it's loss. It's a loss of dreams for the future. It's the loss of identity. And basically it puts us, for me, if that were me, it would put me in to make some of the same decisions I had to make after my daughter Janine's transition. Who am I? And what kind of a world do I want to live in?
Mm.
And I don't know if that was the same for you, but I imagine that had to be an identity crisis for you at that point.
And I agree with you. So looking back, it was I didn't know who I was supposed to be, right? I felt like I was in a mold. You're getting up, going to work, doing all that stuff, come home, take care of the kids, the family, and the house and everything, and just rinse and repeat. And not knowing who you really are. So you just accept it. And then all that happened, and I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going. And I just started going to events and started talking to people I'd never talked to before. And this was all before our podcast started, right? And just kind of, and I'm still feel like I'm on that whim of like, let's give it a shot. Let's just see what happens. And instead of hesitating, instead of just sit back and it sounds like a good idea, but I'm not going to do it. I feel like that's where I'm at right now. It's just taking a leap. And if it's creating something and just see if it works, great. If it doesn't, that's great too. But the idea is to just say you're going to do it and not regret later that you never did it. Right.
Mhm.
And I know you probably hear this too, the richest people in the world are in the graves because they never started their idea, made it what they were supposed to do and who they were supposed to be. Um, so I think I definitely will tell you that I had an identity crisis and I feel so much better for who I am now. And I don't know where I'm going to go, but I'm definitely on the right path. And I would just like to encourage the others that are watching, listening to this, that there's a reason why you do have to go through some things that we don't want to go through because there's something that's so much better for you on the other side. You just don't see it yet, right? You go down that dark hole and you think you can't come out. Um, you can. It might be a slow climb. Somebody might have to throw a rope down to you, a ladder. I don't know. Whatever it takes to get you out. It's possible. It really is. And you have to tell yourself that it's possible and know that you can make it happen. So, with that being said, I just want others to know that they can move forward, even though they are in the darkest moments of their lives at the moment right now, or they think they are, right? It could be so much worse. So, and that's one thing you could do. You could start being just grateful for what you have and where you're at too.
Yeah, I think embracing gratitude becomes a process because I think when we're in the middle of tragedy and we're trying to just wallow through it, it's a very self-absorbing process. And it's hard for us in the beginning to really find much to be grateful for. But as we progress and as we make a decision to re-engage in life again with meaning, we begin to be grateful for the blessings that we have. But it's a process. Um, and everybody will go through that at their own pace. And as long as there's movement, it doesn't matter how long it takes moving forward to that process. But you found obviously a lot of support along the way, whether it was talking to individuals and getting out of your shell and talking to individuals who have also gone through tragedy, but I also know that podcasting has been a big piece of this for you, which has gotten you to this point. And in particularly, we had talked about the Dead Edge podcast. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about how did you find the Dead Edge podcast? And what role did that play in your personal growth and development following your divorce?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So first of all, I was listening to the Dad Edge podcast because I was a dad, right? And 2 years prior to the word divorce or so, I started listening to it somewhere around there, maybe. I just wanted to be a better father. Not that I was a bad father. I just want to show up better, right? And so where do you go? You go listen for advice. You go to something like a podcast because now you're not talking to somebody face to face thinking that they think you're weird. Why are you doing this? And you're never going to get there or whatever, right? So you go listen
Yeah.
to people talk about it and share ideas. So that's how I got started with the Dad's Edge. I don't know how it popped up in my feed or whatever, but I mean, that's the reason why I started listening to it. Uh, January of 2020, which is after I was going to or after I already lost my job, and then the word divorce was going to be said to me in May of 2020. I listened to the podcast, and I don't know the episode, but I found out that they had a men's group, and it's for men, right? The
Yeah.
podcast, and it's not just about dad stuff either. So I inquired about it. I reached out to him and I said, "Look, I said this is where I'm at. I don't know what's going on." I said, "I don't have much money because I was doing different things as work and everything, and I'm like, I don't know what to do." So the one gentleman was just there to say, "Hey, is this a good fit or not?" Right? So they took me in. And they had all these Zooms, anything you can think of under the sun to talk about, um, relationships, finances, business, and anything, right? And working out. So I never joined any of the Zoom calls for the simple fact I didn't know where things were going to go, and I wanted to spend time with the kids when I had them. I was working side jobs, etc. But I did connect with like 4 or 5 men. And when I said connect, I mean, it was just like a phone call or it was a messenger, text sometimes. So I never met any of them in person yet. I stayed in contact with a few of them, but I haven't met any of them in person yet. So these men I found to be better than what I would say would have been my friends. At the time, basically all my friends were disappearing, right? Because they were around because of the marriage in a sense, right? Because they were married to the wife of other friends, right? So I never really had that one person, I guess I could say, that I could lean on and share what's going on. And, the other weird thing too, Dave, is I never shared anything outside of my relationship. I never felt like there was a reason to, nothing really bad going on. And, I never said how good she was. It was just like I was just being me and enjoying the relationship, right? It was different to connect with strangers and just open up, and I'm glad I did, and I encourage others to do something like this as well. It's gonna be hard, it's gonna be uncomfortable, but I'll tell you, where I was, my head was just spinning. The behaviors at home changed, and I wasn't getting answers to the questions I had. So I lost like 20 pounds. I could not sleep. Some nights somebody else decided to come home late, which was new and never happened, especially when we had 2 kids. You're not only worried for the kids, you're worried about, where they're at and what they're doing. Are they okay still? Connecting with these guys, they were able to either message me or call me, and I could get the thoughts out of my head, even if they weren't anything substantial. It was just enough to like release it. They kind of show a new side, right? So one of the guys was just saying, just breathe, right? And if you just breathe, a lot of things just go away. Yeah, you just gotta relax and not get yourself because I was in fight or flight. I was anxiety and depressed, and you got to get yourself out of that place. And eventually, it got to the point where I understood that life was happening for me, not to me. That was a hard thing to comprehend. And these guys, they were, some went through it, some were going through it. And some were just like an expert, because they dealt with something in the past, but now they're there to show up and help other men. It ultimately led me to where I consider this one guy a coach. I know he's out there. He's still helping men and stuff. And it's funny, I met him in that group, and now I see him in other groups that I'm in with entrepreneurs and stuff. But he had a masculinity course, and I'm like, what the heck is masculinity? This is all new to me. Like, this is all different, right? And then you learn about femininity, right? And so what a game changer. But he had this course, and it was the end of April, beginning of May, right before she was even going to say the word, or me not knowing she was going to say the word. I just took a leap. I signed up. It was one day for 4 weeks, and it was me, him, and another guy. The other guy was married. Everything was fine. I think he was just there to understand more of how to be a better man. And so, honestly, the first 2 times I was bawling, because I was a mess. I still not know what was going on at the house. I tried to have conversations with him and the other guy that was on there. Maybe that's what I needed. Maybe because it was a good hour, right? So maybe I just needed to let it out those first 2 times. And then the third and the fourth time, things shifted, and I don't know what or why, but I held myself together, had better composure. I was not bawling. I was listening. I was taking notes, paying attention. I was giving feedback. And the guy that was running it, Jeremy, he even told me that. Like, I could see the difference. I could feel the difference. You're doing a lot better. He was excited. I took notes. I don't know where they all are, but what I really remember from all that is communication, of how a man communicates and how a woman communicates, and how they're completely different, right? And so now you have to understand what she's trying to communicate to you in a different way, right? So I learned a lot of stuff there. I feel like those men and going through that course got me to a place where I was able to accept the word when she said it, because I basically said, I'm done. I was done. I was tired. I couldn't figure anything out. And obviously somebody was already somewhere else emotionally, other things I don't know. But I got to that place. I just said, okay. And like, I never wanted a divorce. My dad's family, his whole side had a divorce. Me growing up, I didn't know my parents were divorced until I was 19 or 20 when I moved out, and my mom said, I'm leaving. We've been divorced forever, and they were just living with each other for the kids, me and my sister. And so I don't know what effect that really had on me, but it showed me like everybody was divorced in my dad's side. And so I never wanted a divorce. And so I always thought that I was doing the right thing. I was showing up every day. I did the gifts when nobody expected. I did the trips when nobody expected. I remember the holidays, all that stuff, right? Um, but I guess if I was to look back, Dave, I would say that it was a big miss of communication. I feel like there was a huge gap from what I've learned and still learning. I believe it was a communication gap that wasn't fulfilled in the beginning of like, this is how I want my life to be, and this is how she wants her life to be. It was just like, we just met and we kind of just drifted, and then it went separate ways ultimately in the end. But that's how the podcast kind of helped me out, with that, navigating through all that. And I did not know then where I was and what was happening. I never contemplated suicide, but Jeremy told me that 10 men commit suicide every day from divorce. And he didn't say it was right at that moment. He said, from divorce. So it could happen years later or whatever. And I'm glad I'm not one of them. And the numbers could be higher now, I'm sure. But to even think of that, and, I wanted to just keep showing up too, because I just have 2 kids. I don't want to give that up. Right. But yeah, what a game changer a podcast could have on your life. And then you taking the action is say, just to reach out and go,
Yep.
I'm here. Can you help me? And again, and I'm sure that's part of your reason why you have yours too, like it is mine. Like it's like a testimonial of podcasting. I did it myself. Right. So it just opens the door to so many people. Just say, you can reach out to the same people too and just get help, right? You just got to be bold enough.
Yeah. And one of the things that I remember saying this in a recent episode that I recorded, I remember seeing something that you put, I think it was in your Podcasters Hub Facebook page, was something about the thing about podcasts is that you can be asleep and somebody listens to that podcast and it's going to have an impact. And while you're sleeping, when we record a podcast, unless we take it down, that's going to stay there for eternity. So somebody's going to pick that up at the moment that they need it, and it's going to be their lifeline for that particular moment. Whether they're thinking about suicide, whether like yourself, they're going through a really difficult divorce and going through the trauma and the questions and the identity crisis that can occur as a result of that, they're going to pick up something. And it's all because we recorded it and chose to leave it up there.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned, and one of the things you were talking about the men's group that you went to, one of the things that men need, I think you've run into this through other individuals you've talked to, we have a great deal of difficulty, particularly men. I look at the baby boomers in our generation, have a great deal of difficulty asking for support and giving support because, we've always been raised, at least in our generation, that's a sign of vulnerability, it's a sign of weakness, when in reality, men feel as intensely as women feel about things. We just deal with it differently. And if we turn it inward, we have things like irritability, loss of sleep, loss of appetite, anger. Men's depression typically gets experienced more as anger and irritability, and women's is more sadness. But when you learned about masculinity versus femininity, the communication piece, yeah, men and women communicate differently. We just need to understand their communication style, ask questions about it, hold space for it, and just come to some common ground and respect the other person's way of communicating. The same with grief. There's 100 million ways to grieve. We just have to respect all of it. As long as the way you're grieving isn't hurting somebody else or yourself, if it works, it works. But in the case of my wife and me, after my daughter transitioned, Jana was like, she would deal with her grief much differently. But once we understood that, we were able to work with that and respect, and our relationship became stronger. But it all started because we took the time to communicate and understand where the other person was coming from. And a lot of times in marriages, that gets assumed for a lot of different reasons. The other thing with parenting about being a good dad, I think every couple, regardless of circumstances they come from, should take a parenting class, because marrying the love of your life doesn't make you a good parent. There's different skills that are needed. And me being raised as an only child and then finding myself having 3 kids, it was a learning experience for me. As an only child, I had my own space. And then now I had to make space for not only a woman I care for deeply, but for family. And being an only child didn't totally prepare me for that. I had to learn as I went along. Those skills you got to acquire, and you have to be aware of needing to require those skills. So that's just some of the impressions I've had and thoughts that came to me just listening to your story.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I totally agree.
Well, you can disagree with me too.
No, I don't disagree. I went through it, man.
But I'm just saying, even though it's my show, you can disagree with me. You don't have to suck up, man.
I'm not sucking up. This is good.
I'm just busting on you, Jen. So, I do this to my students all the time. So I just bust on them like this. So
sure, that's great.
But the other thing too, I also think early experience matters. If your parents went through a divorce, that had to have had an impact on you, so that when you had a divorce, which from the sounds of it, you didn't even see coming, that had to recreate some more stress and some more trauma from dealing with your parents.
Yeah. And when I say I didn't see it coming, it wasn't the word. It was basically like loss of trust, loyalty, and all the other words that you can put into that, like how, why? I can't even imagine that the other person would do something like that. Right. And that's what killed me. That was what killed me the most. Yeah. I'm sure that's what kills literally a lot of people, unfortunately. But yeah, that's what it was for me. So it wasn't like the whole divorce word that like the ending there, but it was just like, how? Like, we didn't even talk about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so that's the thing is like, so as I shared with you, like, I didn't take my relationship outside until I didn't know what was going on. Nobody was answering me, right? And I didn't know who to lean on to, and nor did I even want to really talk about it. So that comes back to like now, like you find that person or you're with that person, like have that conversation right there and then, and and I don't, who knows about their mother. I don't know, but a lot of people just tend to hold on to things and it
Yes.
builds up over time instead of talking about it then getting off their chest. They could be stressing about something so small that, you might have just gave a wink or whatever, and they think it's like the worst thing in the world because they read it wrong. Right. And that's why it's very important. I think it's very important as people start speaking up and just go, what did you mean by that? Because I took
Yes.
it this way. Did you really mean it that way, or did you mean it something else? And then, yeah, you might be talking for 15 minutes about one thing, but now you're not going to worry about it 10 years later, right? Because you already spoke about it. It's off your chest. I truly believe a lot of people just hold on to things and it just builds up. And then you do one wrong thing and then everything just comes out, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, where did this come from? You didn't even
Yeah.
see it coming because you thought everything was good. And us as men believe everything's fine until somebody else tells you different,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And by then it's just too late because nothing's been said.
And I mean, the thing with any type of relationship is really, as you would with anything, is just set the norms for how you want it to go as far as communication. You make active listening a part of the norm. You make it a point where you have space where you're both listening and expressing your concerns,
Mhm.
where you're working on the relationship together, where you're focusing on constant ongoing improvement, but also autonomy outside of the relationship where both parties can have their own interests, but yet come back and those experiences have a synergistic effect in making the relationship more dynamic, more fresh, and just more adventurous.
Yeah.
But, those things have to be stated up front. One of the things, I told my wife, when we had been to a couple of relationships before, and I said, look, if we're just going to get into this and not make a serious commitment, we're going to just kind of fool around with other people, then let's not waste our time. So we agreed to not do that. And 43 years later, here we are, and
Mhm.
it's just, but all of that had to be talked about up front. We had to get it all out in the open so that there was no secrets, there were no guessing games. And we also had the norm in terms of active communication, talking when things were unclear, like you said. What did you mean by that? How did you come to that point of view? And that's something that we can take when we're trying to understand individuals from different belief systems, different tribal affiliations, or different philosophical orientations. Is tell me what resources you use to get to that position. I'd like to understand because maybe those resources are things that I can research and maybe find some benefit to my own belief system, taking those aspects of it and then expanding how I see the world. But we're not going to be able to do that unless we dare to ask those exploratory questions and we make that a part of every relationship that we get involved in. We make that a standard norm.
Yeah. So I might flip the script here a little bit, and I know I'm on your podcast, but when you guys got together and you guys had those conversations in the beginning, did it feel awkward, uncomfortable because it was new because you never did it before?
Honestly, it really wasn't um, uncomfortable. I think it was probably because we had, we had had a good relationship to begin with, and we really hit it off immediately.
Hmm.
And I think we were both at a point where we were hoping and wanted to see this relationship go someplace. So it wasn't difficult having that conversation. I think it might have been, John, had there been some ambivalence in terms of whether or not we were going to totally commit to each other.
Hmm.
But I think that was something that we were pushing towards with the understanding that for some reason, if the chemistry wasn't there, for whatever reason, that we would just break it off, and it never happened that way. In fact, my wife told me, she goes, I'm going to introduce you to the family, and if my brother doesn't like you, my cousin doesn't like you, my father's dog doesn't like you, it's off. So I made sure for the dog I had some treats in my pocket. So
Right.
I think it's, because we had been through relationships before, we had been
Mhm.
through life before. I think we were both at the point where we did want to settle down, and we were just going to get right down to business.
Nice. Yeah. So like you went on that healing journey first and you know what you want. She knew what she wanted. And you guys came together and said, okay, let's do it.
One of the things I was committed to, and my father was unfaithful to my mom, and I made it a point that I would never make those same choices in a relationship that my father did. So I came into this relationship firmly, firmly wanting it to be monogamous, without any uh, open marriage or open relationship on the side. And I made that clear, and she understood, and she agreed. I think it was based on our past experiences, again, based on my early childhood experiences. I knew what I wanted and didn't want in a relationship.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And yeah, it's something that I'm obviously very glad that it worked out the way it did.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
but anyway, let's get back a little bit into podcasting. I want to talk about the Podcasters Hub,
Mhm.
in terms of what inspired its creation and the type of resources and services you provide to individuals who have a podcast or are interested in starting one.
Yeah. So what inspired is, so I hesitated, right? So before I started my podcast, I went to an event, sat at a breakfast table with the person that was running the event and a bunch of other people. Everybody left, but this one guy, he's like, what do you want to do? And I said, start a podcast. And he's like, do you have anything? And I said, I have 10 Facebook Lives where I was interviewing entrepreneurs. He's like, just strip the audio and use that. Well, great idea, right? But it's not what I wanted my podcast to be. So I did it. 6 months later, I stripped the audio. I started my podcast with those 10 Facebook Lives, and Life's Checkmark was born. I stated that in episode 0, saying, hey, these first 10 are X. But after that, this is what the podcast is about. So it really got me up and running. And I don't think I would be doing the podcast if I didn't just start with that. And along the way, it was friends, family, mentors, coaches, and it just snowballed from there. Now it's other podcasters, other guests, other podcasters met. So that inspired me to start the hub and the coaching program because I run into so many people that want to start a podcast, or they played with it a little bit, they stopped, and now they want to get back into it. Stuff like that, where people just don't know really what to do. So I created Podcasters Hub as a space to get off of Facebook, so you're not looking at threads that just get lost. And it's a school community, so you have classrooms and everything is saved and organized. Um, and right now we meet bi-weekly where we could talk about a topic or we just talk about questions that we might have. I do a special guest coming in just like yourself, Dave. We're
Mhm.
able to present and share whatever you know the most about podcasting. I loved when you were on because it started off with a few things that you wanted to share, and then we just dove into a lot of the script questions came up, right? And that's awesome because, for somebody that uses it and others don't, or they were, and they just didn't know what other features it had, they were able to learn that. So the hub has that space where people come in from the outside to share something like that. And then I can create tutorials and all that stuff if people ask for them, right? It's available if they want to ask for it, and then I can create it. I don't know all the programs out there, but there's a lot of people that are using different programs. So why not support each other with those programs or say, hey, have you used this one? Try this one. The other way is we could help collaborate with each other. We could share guests, et cetera, to help grow our podcast. The whole idea is to build a large community where essentially it's like a network and we just support each other to keep moving forward. Because sometimes you might post an episode and you get 2 listens one day and 5 listens another day. And it's not the thousands of what you think everybody should be getting. Because essentially, most podcasts aren't getting anywhere near 1,000 downloads per month, right? It's possible, But people starting out in indie podcasters, they don't have that large reach because they don't have people doing all the content for them and all that stuff. And so that's why it's a struggle, because we look at Alex Hormozzi's doing all that. So they got all these people working for them. So they get all this content out and they have a big name. So now they get, all this large following right away. You have to just stay focused and remember why you started the podcast, what's your desire and everything, and get away from the audience growth and the monetization part, right? So that's what you need to learn first, is your why. And within the hub, I want to keep emphasizing that. Don't give up for this reason. I just had somebody jump in yesterday, and we were just talking about this right before we jumped on here. He's going to do a podcast about sobriety. And so he's been sober for about 35 years. He's got books and programs and everything to help people. And this is his next stage, right? Where he can go ahead and he can be the expert on his podcast. He can have guests come on. He can have clients maybe. This is a whole new world of how he can share to the world the message of being sober and how to get through it in the way he has and way others have. So there's that opportunity there. And that's what I focus on, helping that person overcome the fear of the camera, the mic, whatever it is, and just start and launch, get episode 10, episode 21. Now you're in the top 1% because most fall off after that or before that. Yeah. So that's what the hub's all about. Just a better community than Facebook groups and stuff where, things get lost. And now we can categorize things and we can just come together as a team and just encourage each other to keep going. And now it's stemmed into me having a live event next year in April around that and a whole bunch of other things. But that's
Well,
what
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's what the hub's about. It's just building that community of podcasters.
Well, and the other thing you've got going on, you got an anthology book in the works.
I do. Great. Yeah, it's this one right here.
Yeah. Well,
So-
tell us about a little bit about the anthology book project. What's it about? Who's going to be in it?
Absolutely.
And what do you want readers to take away from this?
Yeah. So first of all, I still have a few chapters left. So if there's anybody that's interested in being part of this, they can reach out. What's it about, Dave, is people that have been a guest on my show, or they haven't been one yet, but they want to be part of the book, and now they get to be a guest. So they're coming on my podcast, they're sharing their journey in life. We're having an open, honest, authentic, vulnerable conversations, just like you and I had. And now they get to be part of this book with 29 other guests I've had, right? So number one, there's a way they can network with those people, right? And now you build that network of other podcasters, other guests, other entrepreneurs, business, any relationship you can grow from this. So there's that. You'll have a chapter that you get to write on your journey, and it doesn't have to be what was said in the podcast. So now you have another opportunity here to write something that you're like, oh, I missed that in that episode. I really wanted to share that. Right. And so now you can do that. For the people that I've had in the past, like 2 years ago, like they're jumping in the book too. So their episode's already done, right? Their journey stopped there when that podcast was released. But now they have 2 years, they can fill in a gap in this chapter. And so what the book's going to allow is a person to pick it up. They can read that chapter. They can see the profile of the guest. They can read the bio of the guest, and they can go ahead and click or, type in the links to go reach out to the guest or services or whatever, right? But the big part I really love here is to have a QR code. So I'll have a QR code. So now people can go back and watch and listen to the episode that was recorded. So essentially they can read about you, they can watch you, they can listen to you, right? And then that link is also, or that QR code will have the links clickable too, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just everybody typing it in. Why am I doing this? Number one, I'm 3 years in, so 175 episodes. Dave, you're a little bit ahead of me. It's okay. Right. When I was around episode 52, I'm like, oh, this is great. I got 52. I'm a year in. I was at an event and this guy did a book on 52. right? Like a deck, 52 cards. And I was like, well, that would be a great idea to have every guest in a book. And nothing became of it. But now I have 175 episodes. A few of them are solo, but I got people jumping in now that haven't even been on my podcast, right? And so I found that way where I can bring the guests together and they can network and they get to know each other. And I'm sure there's a lot of collaboration that can become of this just in that sense there, let alone sharing a message to the world now in writing instead of just on a podcast. Some people haven't been authors before, right? Um, and that's the big thing of mine. So I have one event I'm working on next year that I'll be holding. I have 2 events I'll be at speaking, and who knows what else, right? So when I have them and when I go to these events, I want to have a whole bunch of these books on hand so I can hand them out for free. That's what I want to do. So people don't have to, on my end, they don't have to pay for it. Now they get to go ahead, watch, listen, and read about 30 people that they never met before, right? And so they might find that one person that they need to reach out to talk about the relationships, to talk about why they can't lose weight or something like that, right? So there's another reason. And then the final piece, Dave, I'll give you, there could be more, I don't know, but this is where I really want to take it bigger. So whoever's part of this book, I want to be able to get them to go to a stage. And a lot of people I've talked to want to speak, or maybe they have already and they just can't find another event to go to for whatever reason. Maybe they want to become a better speaker. So I want to create that opportunity now where they can get coaching done. And they can go ahead and be at an event to meet everybody in this book in person, whoever decides to participate, and give that opportunity, right? And so now people can see them live in person talking about the journey that they went through or whatever that is. I don't know yet, but I want to create that space where they can come together in person. So that's where the people in the first one are going to go. And, they're ahead of the game. But I'm really excited because I always wanted to bring my guests together, and now I believe this is the way I found that we can work together and come together and help other people together.
Well, it sounds like the book will be an extension of community that will complement what you're doing with the Podcasters Hub, as well as with your mission to really, leave a mark through service in the world and try to help others through whatever endeavors you put together, either that you do yourself or that you have your guests collectively or individually do. The other thing that I like about the book is that I can listen to the podcast and read along for the story at the same time, and it feels like I've made a connection with that person because their story becomes more meaningful because I have a voice now that goes with that. So it's like you have the opportunity to make a very intimate connection with somebody you don't even know. But
That's true. And right. And in your sense, you have a podcast. So you could promote your podcast, your book, your courses, whatever that is. Right. And so that could be available on that website too, where they just click, they can click on go listen to your podcast. It doesn't have to be just mine.
yeah,
Right. So yeah, there's so much room for growth. That's why I'm just so excited. It's a way I can give back to the guests and to the people that don't even know they exist yet. Right. So that's why I'm excited about it.
well, I've said this on other podcasters. I think there's an old Lakota saying that we will be forever known by the tracks that we leave behind. And from the sounds of it, you're going to leave some really, really powerful tracks behind, John, if you keep going the way you're going.
I hope so. Hopefully they're deep.
Oh, they'll be deep and permanent because long after we transition to another existence, we want our message and we want our messages that we've tried to impart to the world to be carried on. And that's my hope for myself. I've always believed it's about the message. It's not about me. And if the message that I've tried to communicate, the impact I've tried to leave gets carried on for generations and generations, I can look from wherever I am and just say that, yeah, I did what I came here and intended to do. So,
Yeah.
so
And you're doing it.
yeah, we're all doing it together.
Yes.
And I think when we commit to service, we meet other like-minded people and we formed that really powerful community. And the people that have come into my life have never been through coincidence. So there's no coincidence that you're in my life now. There's no coincidence that the other individuals who have come to me during my worst tragedy and in the aftermath where I found peace, they were all meant to be in my community when they came and when they were supposed to be. So, I firmly believe that now. So your podcast, the Life's Checkmark podcast, tell our audience a little bit more about that, what your mission is, what you want your audience to take away from that, and what have 175 episodes taught you about podcasting and about the human experience?
Yeah, that's a lot. So what is it about? It's life's checkmark for a reason, right? So essentially, the way I see it, so you can look at you're growing up, you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you get a degree, whatever that is, you carry out a career, family, house, fence, all that stuff, 401k. That essentially, I believe, somebody telling you this is how to live your life, that's your life's checkmark, right? I want you to check your own life, right? Make your own check mark. Like, this is how my life is supposed to be because I want it to be this way, not because somebody else tells me to follow this path and let it be that way. So when I have people come on, they share their journey in life, right? And so most of them are coming on and they share how they were doing great. They had a pitfall, whatever that is, and they had to rise from it, right? And, it's not always like I just said about school and all that stuff. It could be, I've had people, we spoke about trauma before, unfortunately, people that lost their children, and people that dealt with abuse, dealt with addictions, bankruptcy, sex trafficking. I mean, like, it's being left for dead, I mean, I could go on. And so, like, you want to listen to them to know that for the most time in your life, it's not really that bad, right? It's bad to you because it's painful because you're not used to what it is where you are supposed to, where you feel like you're supposed to be at. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be way up here, but I'm not, right? And I should be thankful for where I am because I used to be down here. And other people would rather be in your shoes, right? They might be living on the street. They might just want to be in the house that you're still struggling to hold on to. So they can come on and people can listen to this and watch how people navigate through their lives so that they know that they can get through it as well. Like I said, they can reach out to me, they can reach out to the guests, they can reach out to somebody else just so that they know they're not alone. Now, I don't have that masculinity course. I don't have that kind of stuff, right? But I do have connections. I do know people like yourself. I can say, hey, just go talk to them. They might help, they might not, but it's somebody that they can go talk to. I ran into a gentleman that he was in jail for a while. He got out and he's trying to work on himself. And he's coming up with these childhood traumas that he didn't know he was holding on to. And so he's trying to listen to podcasts like mine or listen to motivational videos and stuff on YouTube and try to fight this, right? So I gave him a couple people to connect with. I know he has connected with them. And they gave him some books and stuff to read that I didn't mention. So, he's growing there. So, like, these are the opportunities that you have if you go listen to my podcast or yours or somebody else's in the same realm where they can learn to become better. So that's what Life's Checkmark is all about. Just reaching that one person that needs to hear it, to know that they're not alone and they can be great too. And they are great where they are, right? They just don't feel like it.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep doing what I'm doing. I started with the mission of just learning about other people's journeys in hopes that it reaches that one person that needs to hear it. And that's why I keep doing what I'm doing. Like I said, it wasn't for the audience. It wasn't for monetization, but that's what Life's Checkmark is about. I'd love for anybody to go check it out. See, maybe they check out yours, Dave, and they just go, yeah, man, Dave's a really awesome guy. I got to learn a whole bunch more stuff about him just from that episode. And that's what happens. You keep jumping around all these other podcasts. You're going to share different things that you never thought you would share before.
Yeah. And, one of the things I've learned too is I know this is a little bit off track, but one of the things I've learned is that now that I'm a podcaster myself, I become a better podcast guest because I know what I go through with bad audio. I know what other podcasters go through with bad audio. So when I'm on another podcast, I make sure that I'm preparing as I would if I was doing the interview. I do my sound checks. I do have my plug-in mic. I do everything. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned from from podcasting and talking to other podcasters, how seriously they take their craft. And that makes me want to be a better podcast guest. That inspires me. So not only I think are we inspired by the guest that we have, but I think we inspire each other to be better guests and to just be better presence for those individuals who need it because of
Yeah.
our own shared and collective experiences. So
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. We're on the same track, man.
yeah, yeah, we're preaching to each other's choirs.
That's right.
So
Yeah. Keep going.
keep going. Yeah. So, boy, we could go probably for another 3 hours, but I know you've probably got some things to do tonight. So I'm gonna try to wrap this up with a couple of final questions for you.
Okay.
My first question is you've left our listeners with quite a bit today, quite a bit to think about. But if you could leave our listeners with one ultimate wisdom, one ultimate takeaway today, Jon, what would that be?
Don't quit. I'll say why. But right, you have a dream, you have that desire to do something, do it no matter what somebody else tells you. They're going to tell you not to do it. Yeah, you might fail, but at least you can say you tried. You made an attempt, you saw a vision, and you wanted to see if it worked or not. And I say don't quit because for the simple fact, I have 2 kids of my own, and I don't want to quit with everything I'm doing. I never thought I would be in a book. I never thought I'd be speaking on stage, which I did this past year. I never thought I would, creating a live event and doing a whole podcast event around podcasting. There's a lot of things I never thought of. And there's other things I don't even know what they are yet that I'm sure I'm going to wind up doing. So I don't want to quit because if I quit, then they know they can see that, right? And so they're watching, even though they're not always watching, they're not always listening to what their parents and other people around them are doing, but it's a reflection, right? So it's all about the action, not about the words that we tell them. So that's why I say don't quit. I hold it to myself not to quit. And I basically got to the point where let's just see what happens. And so, your listeners should not quit and, start, if they haven't jumped into anything, start.
Yeah. See where it goes, release the expectation in terms of what could happen and just visualize what could happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. So I'm going to give you a chance to promote yourself a little bit. Tell our audience how they can get in touch with you, find out about the progress of when your anthology book is going to be published, contract for your services, find the Podcasters Hub. What's the best way for them to do that, Jon?
Yeah, the best way is lifescheckmark.com. There you can find the hub, you can find the live event information, and you can also find how to work with me one-on-one to start your podcast. As far as the book goes, if you're interested in being part of this one, or if it fills up and we start another one, just reach out to me personally. You can use my email, which I'll give to Dave, and you put in the show notes. And you can also check out, look for me on Facebook and message me or whatever. That's how I've been doing the book. So I share the information with each individual I talk to and go from there. Because I want to make sure so you have to be a good fit on the podcast before you can be part of the book. That's how it works for me. But yeah, and so the book is set to publish in April of next year. There's a few more chapters left, so they're there if anybody's listening to this. I know this is coming out a little later, but you never know. They might still be available. And anything else, Dave? Did I miss anything else? You can find my podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you find a podcast.
And I'll make sure all of that information gets in the show notes as well, too, when it goes live. You're welcome. Jon, thank you so much. It was a wonderful conversation this evening, and I know we're going to be having more in the future outside of the podcast. So,
yes, I'm going to see you in person, Dave.
Yes, we have to make that happen, Jon.
Oh, it's happening. Don't worry.
Yeah, we have to make that happen. So, but thanks again for a great conversation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.